What's up, man? Welcome to PTC Cast, episode 52. 52? Is it 52?
It's 52.
I think it's 52.
Yeah.
Today we go over creating your own anterior workout for your upper body. What is anterior, you might ask yourself? It is chest, shoulders, and triceps, man. A system of muscles that work very well together and make you look
amazing.
Swolled up.
Yep.
You don't get that Goku physique, man.
That Superman physique, man. Come on with it.
So we break that down for you and try to give you some different options, different ideas, and things to keep in the back of your brain when going into the gym. So that way we can be sure you're covering every base for those muscle groups and developing them to their full extent and not doing anything redundant or silly in the gym. So we hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, it is brought to you by ProgressThroughChange.com, where you can get your 4 Easy Habits for Fat Loss guide. We are incredibly proud of this guide and the fact that we've had over 700 downloads and literally nothing but positive response. It is not a magic pill. It is not anything. It is not any snake oil. It is. It is simple habits that are applicable and easy and doable for anybody. And I'm not sitting here and telling you you're going to burn 90 pounds in fucking 10 days or something silly like that. I'm sitting here trying to give you the tools to change your life forever.
Yep.
So check it out, man. Enjoy the show. Always reach out to us with any extra questions. And enjoy the show. Build your pecs. Build your triceps. Build your shoulders. Here we are, episode 52 of the PTC Cast. Today, we're going to be talking about building your own anterior upper body workout.
What the hell is that?
What is anterior, you might ask yourself? It is the muscles on the front side of your upper body. Specifically today, we're going to talk about chest, shoulders, and triceps. We've got another section coming later down the road for abs, core, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
But today, we're going to be talking about kind of our bodybuilding, chest, shoulders, triceps. I say bodybuilding, but bodybuilding is anybody who wants to build some muscle, right? Anybody who wants to look good and be strong. Yeah, exactly. So we gave the people about a solid 3 weeks to work on legs while we took a little bit of a break. But, you know, man, seasonal, life happens. Yeah. Here we are now this week, and we're excited to be here for this next episode. If you are someone who's looking to build a sick pair of legs, I highly recommend you go check out our previous podcast after this one, where we give you 5 keys to a full leg workout. We have a solid PDF document that goes with that as well. If you'd rather just hop over there, download it, check it out, and then listen to the episode, kind of get some details. But that's something that we're proud that we put out, and we really would like you to check out. We are confident that will change your leg training. So today we're going to take something a little bit similar with an anterior upper body approach, where we'll talk about building chest, shoulders, and triceps. Yeah, look at that.
Chesticles.
Look at them chesticles, man.
Oh, man.
Woo! Let's go. Man, this is always a fun one because what is every guy's favorite exercise at 15 years old?
Bench press.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby.
What's the age-old question?
How much you bench, bro?
What you got? Yeah, exactly, man. So I am excited to talk about this one because I think this is just kind of like a classic favorite. You know, International Chest Days on Monday.
We're going to go viral with this
one. Every bro loves their chest day, man. So again, you know, we're kind of talking in bodybuilding context here. So through this whole episode, you know, whenever I'm throwing things out, I'm basically trying to give you the biggest bang for your buck exercises within these muscle groups. So basically my goal is to kind of explain the thought process around placing these exercises and why we go with these exercises, and then just kind of spitball a couple different options you'd have within that realm. So basically our goal here is to be sure that we're being efficient in our workout and we're not being redundant. So our goal is kind of to cover all our bases, get our biggest bang for our buck without overexerting, wasting time, or BSing around. So that being said, starting with kind of the number one key to developing any, if not all, upper body musculature is scapular stability. So your ability to lock your scapula in one place while you perform other exercises, or any exercise, I guess I should say. So, for example, we all have gone into a gym, an Anytime Fitness, a Lifetime, a 24-hour, a rec center, and you see, you know, they got the tower of the Easy Bar curls, right? We got Easy Bars from 10 to 100 pounds, and we have all seen a guy grab a 80, 90, 100-pounder and go train some curls that involve glutes, that involve, that involve momentum, that involve who knows what, you know? And so the question there kind of becomes, you know, is it the weight? Is it the movement? Is it the swinging? It's a little bit of all of it, but the core piece there is the scapula. When it's all over the place, you don't have an anchor. You're not actually creating a contraction. Excuse me. A contraction is those muscle fibers coming together, shortening and lengthening, shortening and lengthening. And we don't actually let those things shorten when we move our anchors around, right? Imagine you're taking these two different anchors and you're moving them. You're never actually changing the length of them because you're keeping that distance the same. But let's say those shoulders are locked down and back. We contract that muscle, i.e., elbows are pinched to your side, shoulders are locked down in the curl. That scapula is locked in, your anchor point. Then our muscle can contract and shorten. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
We move from 2 points at once, we're not really contracting a muscle. So like we usually talk about, this is almost more dependent upon your ability to keep the wrong things from moving. So scapular stability is how well can you lock those shoulder blades down and back, down, forward, whatever the exercise is. How well can you keep those suckers there to be sure that nothing else is taking over the movement, right? To be sure that we're not shrugging or we're not internally rotating or we're not extending and bending our spine through a movement, right? Being sure that we're locked in from our anchor point. So some of the best ways you can tell this is when you watch yourself go through an exercise, it could be push-ups, it could be curls, it could be overhead press, it could be bench press. What do your shoulder blades do in relation to the rest of your body, right? So when you go down on a bench press, do your shoulders shrug up towards your ears and do they round forward? When you go up for your curls, do your shoulders shrug under you and do you kind of end up in this weird arched under position? Watch yourself in the way that your shoulders and your entire body move through that motion. So when we talk about scapular stability, usually the easiest place to start is retraction and depression, or back to our bench press example. And this can be used for almost any chest training, but you could take a dumbbell press, a machine press, a pec deck, a cable fly. We want to have those shoulder blades pulled down and back the entire time into retraction and depression. Reason being, it's going to put us in the safest position to train our pecs and the most optimal position to train our pecs. The reason the scapular stability is important is once we lose that retraction and depression through our bench press, so let's say we are at the top of our bench press, we lock those shoulder blades down and back, chest is puffed up, that upper back is nice and braced, scaps are locked in. We lower that bench down. Once we press up, the second those shoulder blades roll forward, we have incorporated different musculature.
Yeah.
Maybe we've used our serratus. Maybe we've used our anterior delt. Maybe we've used an internal rotator, our teres. Maybe we've used our bicep. I mean, there's a long list of other things you can use when we're not anchoring properly. So where I'm going with that is form over everything. And we have already discussed that multiple times. But I mean so much so that I've literally taken I had a client, I won't share his name, but he very successful in his field, has been working out for 20, 25 years, done a bodybuilding show before, has checked all the boxes of the 405 squat, the 315 bench press, et cetera, and been working with this guy for a couple years now. And finally, I shouldn't say finally, well, he reached a point where he decided, he needed to work with someone. And to make a long story short, this guy is used to 300, 400 pound bench presses, big guy, 240 pound guy. And day one, we took 20 pound dumbbells and destroyed his chest through dumbbell presses because we just trained to retraction and depression the whole time. So it was the first time he had ever locked those shoulder blades down and back and just use his pecs to press. Now, he had great pecs, but once we were able to just use the pecs to press, they blew up with 20 pound dumbbells. And we're sitting here talking about a 240 pound guy at the time who has trained for 20, 25 years, done all the heavy bench presses and, all that crazy shit. And here we are, progressing with such minimal weight because we are being so isolated and drawn in on the pecs. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, one of the things recently that I've been practicing is doing that along with keeping my elbows in place when I'm doing bicep curls. And before I did that, I would do the bro bicep curls, and maybe I could do like 45, 50 pounds for, a set of 10. Yeah. Now I'm not going any higher than 25 pounds. Yeah. And that's for like a set of 8. Yeah. And a hard ass set of 8.
Yeah. And this is that's a whole different tangent. And it's funny. This is kind of the part of the whole game that lights me up the most, is it's like the goal is not necessarily to move as much weight as possible. It's to move as much resistance as possible. It's to challenge as much resistance as possible. You know what I mean? And so to me, it's exciting when you learn that, like, oh, I can do the same amount to my biceps with 20 pound dumbbells as I could with 40. So let me learn this with 20 and then get back to 40. You know what I'm saying?
It definitely does feel exciting.
Because it resets everything for you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And then you feel like you're actually doing it properly. So whenever you do get back to those 40s, you're just, not only will you be stronger and your muscles will be bigger, you're just going to feel better about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I said 40s or whatever, and it might not be that simple, but point being, like, you have to standardize that form first. Once that form is standardized, we're safe and we're efficient, and then the load pushes. So, obviously, if your form's going to be a 99% and you can push it for 5 pounds, go crazy. But if you're going to lose your form to a B minus or a C plus rank, right? Maybe we keep the weight a little bit lower. Mm-hmm. So kind of moving into pec training here, I've been using the bench press as an example just because that's everybody's favorite. But you're really your biggest determinant factor when you're training your pecs is how well can you keep your scaps locked down and back, and how well can you focus on out and in rather than up and down with your elbows. Oh, okay. So a lot of the times, and I'm going to stick here and I'm going to talk about bench press a little bit more, but a lot of the times when we think bench press, we think up and down, right? Mm-hmm. Our pec's primary function is called horizontal adduction, which is a fancy way of saying pulling your arm from off your body to in your body. So your pecs do not do up and down, your pecs do out and in. They can do a little bit of up and down depending on what we're talking about, but for sake of conversation. So on a bench press, if we just think bar to my chest and bar up, we can tuck our elbows in, we can use triceps, we can use anterior deltoids, we can use different things. But maybe on something like a dumbbell press, where we can lock those shoulder blades down and back, and we can actually pull our elbows and our dumbbells down and out, and then press our elbows and our dumbbells up and in, we can challenge that out and in pattern instead of being stuck in a fixed hand position on a barbell where we have to go up and down. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, you can manipulate your hand position and make that work differently, et cetera, et cetera. But point being there, whenever you learn that to really get your pecs, you have to think of pushing your elbows out in varying planes, you figure out how to contract that a little bit better. So shoulder blades are locked down and back, and elbows are focusing on traveling out in whichever plane we are currently training. You following me?
Yeah, that was actually like a huge light bulb, because I've always trained chest going up and down. Even if I'm doing flies, it's mainly like I'm not focusing on coming out and then going back in. Yeah. And that's something that I've actually always avoided. Mm-hmm. And, I wonder why, or I've always wondered why, like, triceps were my strong suit in bench, and like why I was biased toward using my other muscles other than my chest. It's because I just learned I haven't been training chest right.
Yeah. And man, it's interesting that you said that, because in your last powerlifting bout, I specifically remember you talking about widening your bench grip. And dude, I mean, and I'm not sitting here saying everybody needs to go out and widen 3 inches on each bench grip. It's going to be different for everybody. But I mean, within the month, your chest looked different to me. Yes. And that's sitting here in a shirt in front of me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's, part of that is just your setup in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. If that grip is so narrow, you just can't push your elbows out.
Exactly. I would have to bench with my elbows
in. Your wrist's going to get torn up. Your elbow's going to get torn up, right? Mm-hmm. So at that point, you have to play with it a little bit and figure out, is this movement even going to work for me? Because anyone who's followed me for a while knows the barbell bench press doesn't work for me. Yeah. I have injured my shoulder 3 times before. I say injured, impinged, whatever you want to call it, but it's always been on a barbell bench press, trying to force myself into that movement. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole nother tangent, but the barbell bench press that we've been sitting here and talking about a ton might not be your best option. So usually when it comes to pec training, I like to just pick 2 different movements in different planes. Mm-hmm. Maybe I shouldn't say different planes, but varying degrees of shoulder flexion. So where is your hand? Is your hand higher, or is your hand a little bit lower? So that could mean your elbows flare all the way out at the level of your shoulder, or it could mean your elbows are flaring out maybe at a 45-degree armpit halfway down. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah,
I know it's kind of hard.
I'm trying to visualize it in like maybe a dumbbell bench press.
Right. So you kind of think maybe a dumbbell bench press where your armpit's 90 degrees and your elbows are flared all the way out, and then maybe a dumbbell bench press where your armpit's 45 degrees. Mm-hmm. And then from that point, we might need to be varying our incline or decline to the bench.
Got you.
So usually, for sake of conversation in this podcast and most people, I'm going to pick a fly movement and a press movement on some sort of incline, decline, or flat position. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to just sit here and pick the 2 exercises that come to my brain that are going to work the best for most people, I'm going to pick a low incline dumbbell press. So you set up your bench, you put it at the lowest incline you can. Maybe we're talking 10 to 20 degrees max. And a push-up. The reason we want to be training push-ups as well, contrary to what I was just talking about with the retraction and depression, push-ups give us an opportunity to train our pec minor a little bit more. Same with the dips. That's a muscle that sits underneath the big portion of our chest, and it can help us really puff our chest up if we give that a little bit of extra love, and that takes protraction. So usually what I'll have somebody do if they want to really bring up their chest and they come to me day one, we're going to start with that low incline dumbbell press, and then we're going to go into a push-up. Now, depending upon who the person is and how their rib cage is shaped, we might need to vary the position of the push-up. But for sake of conversation, when you're going through your push-ups, you want to be sure your shoulders are above your wrists and your hands are outside of those shoulders. So same idea as our dumbbell press. When you're going down on those push-ups, you need to be thinking out with your elbows, not tucked in. Again, the name of the game with pec training is out and in, not up and down. So
I'm thinking how I do push-ups, which is like this.
Tucked in. Yeah, big triceps over here, man. Yeah, horseshoe triceps over here. That's why, man. Yeah. And that's, it has paid. But if chest was your goal, maybe we'd have to approach it a little bit differently.
Got you.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and it's none of this is necessarily saying like you're wrong if you do it that way, right? I'm just sitting here.
I hate having big triceps, by the way. I'm dead serious.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Man, I've been sitting here trying to get triceps like yours,
yeah, it's
man.
annoying. And now I know why.
That's hilarious, man.
Instead of training chest, I've been training triceps.
That's such a problem, yeah. My triceps are too big. Damn, yeah. Life is hard. But with the push-up, the push-up gives us an ability to protract our scapula as well. Or when we finish that push-up and let's say we're in that bottom position, right? Upper back's nice and tight, those elbows are out. We press all the way up through that push-up, and then boom, we can actually push our shoulder blades off the body. We can push the earth away from us. Mm-hmm. And what I'm going to sit here and call with air quotes a safer position. That being said, dips are also an option for that. And I just think it is a good idea to be able to move your body weight through that plane. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm going to pick a low incline dumbbell press, and I'm going to pick a push-up variation. Maybe it's knee push-ups, depending on the person. Maybe it's dips. Dips also give you that opportunity to push those shoulder blades out and away. So any other movement, though, that's going to come to maybe flies, presses, dumbbells, barbells in space, you're going to probably want to have those shoulder blades retracted and depressed. And I hate to sit here and speak in kind of gray terms, but everybody's different, man, and everybody's at a different phase. So know that you can always reach out to me at Progress Through Change on Instagram for any sort of specific questions for you. So those are kind of my two base movements, and I told myself I was going to try to make this quick and not drag on, but I would be silly not to talk about a fly movement. So a fly movement could be a dumbbell fly where we're keeping that elbow straight, and again, we're training that out and in motion, right? This is probably the best opportunity to focus on that out and in. Could be a pec deck, could be a cable fly. For most people, if you have access to it, I would recommend a pec deck. Dumbbell fly works too. If you're going to use a dumbbell fly, I would pause in the bottom positions. So again, the shoulder blades are locked down and back, and we're thinking out and in here. Does all that make sense? You think I'm good to move on to shoulders here?
Yeah, really quick. What is a pec deck? Is that with the ropes, the cable ropes?
It's a cable fly.
Okay, cable fly.
Or excuse me, not a cable fly. It's a machine that emulates a cable fly, right? So you're sitting on the machine and it flies out and in.
Got you. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it might be called like a chest fly or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. The reason I actually really like that pec deck or the chest fly is just because it's on a guided path. But cables you can do sort of the same thing. You just have a little bit more freedom. So those are kind of where my brain goes for all that. Moving into the shoulders department. This is a bit of a tough one, man, because shoulders are one of those interesting ones that are a little bit different for everybody depending on who you are and what your strong points, your weak points are. But similar to pecs, we're going to probably want to have those shoulder blades locked down and back for most of these exercises. On some of these, I would say you could give yourself a little bit more room. So we're talking about maybe a dumbbell lateral raise, right? Or where you're standing up tall, you got dumbbells and you're reaching them out and away. That's one where we want to lock those shoulder blades down, but maybe as you reach that top position, you can naturally let them shrug just a hair. The name of the game is not shrugging all the way through, right? So this is one that we're going to look to be a little bit more fluid on, and we're going to look to give ourselves a little bit more freedom on and find what works the best, but we still need to standardize those reps. So let's say maybe you find that you feel the best contraction and it feels the best on your shoulders for you to shrug a little bit at the top and to lead with your pinky. That's great. Mm-hmm. For me, maybe I need to keep those shoulders down the whole time and lead with my index finger. That's fine too. Shoulders are one of those very specific things where we have some freedom here to play with, so you need to find what works best for you. Starting first with the lateral head, or what everybody wants with shoulders. You know, you look at someone straight on and they got those wide shoulders, those superhuman, super soldier shoulders.
Boulder shoulders.
Exactly. That's the lateral head of the delt, right? That's what builds that outside portion. And we want to be talking about lateral raises for that. For most people, we want to be talking about a cable lateral raise. The reason being, it's going to put your shoulder in a better position to contract. Whether that's a one-arm cable lateral raise, you can lay down on a cross cable bench and do 2 arms at a time. You could even find like a machine lateral raise. Dumbbell lateral raises are just fine, but if you're going to do those, you want to be sure you're pausing in that top position. So with a dumbbell lateral raise, our hardest position is the top. So we want to be sure that we're pausing up there, but we want to have some sort of lateral raise in our shoulder routine to be sure that we're really emphasizing sort of that outward sweep of the shoulders, right?
So quick question on the chest flies.
Yeah.
You were saying that if you are using dumbbells that you need to pause. And now you're saying if you are using dumbbells on the shoulder.
You want to pause.
Yeah. So why is that?
So that's a good question. Whenever we're using dumbbells, well, whenever we're training anything, we're fighting gravity, and fighting gravity is always directly down, but maybe we manipulate it with cables and lines of pull.
Okay.
So for example, with a cable lateral raise, maybe I'm being pulled in by the cables rather than being pulled directly down by gravity. So it's, again, we're working with audio here, but imagine that cable is pulling me inwards. That a force pulling me in is different than a force pulling me down.
Yeah.
So when we have that force pulling us in with something like a cable, it's going to be a little bit more consistent through. So it's going to feel a little bit more consistent all the way through.
And it feels way more consistent.
Now, when we do something like a dumbbell lateral raise or a dumbbell fly, because of the semantics of the exercise, as that hand reaches farther and farther away from the body, the lever becomes longer, so the weight is perceived as heavier. So point being here, we want to pause in the position that is the most challenging.
Okay.
So if you're going to go, so kind of to follow up on that, if I'm going to do a dumbbell lateral raise, maybe I'm going to go a little bit lighter just so I can pause in that top position. But if I'm going through a cable lateral raise, I obviously still want to be emitting control and showing good form, but maybe I don't need to be as specific with that pause, since I can spend more of the time through the whole range.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because when I go through that dumbbell lateral raise, when that hand is beneath my shoulder, there's no tension on my shoulders. And when I go through that dumbbell fly, when that hand is above my shoulder, there's no tension on my pecs. There's no lever length. So point being there, we want to pause where it's the hardest or where the muscle is being challenged the most. And there's some other bonus points for scapular stability as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So I definitely always encourage that when using dumbbells, because I feel like it's important that we're spending time where that position is the hardest and that muscle is having to fire the most, right? So that is the lateral raise. I'm going to usually opt for a cable, and I recommend most people start using a handle with the cables. So, standing nice and square to the cable, reaching out away. If you go on YouTube and look up cable lateral raise, surely you'll find an example. One thing you can do as well that you've probably seen me do on Instagram at some point is you can use a cuff as well. So sometimes you see people use like ankle cuffs for kickbacks and stuff like that. Well, a lot of the times we can actually push with our shoulder a lot more than we can push and grip at the same time. So after you've had some practice with the movement and you're confident with your execution and you want to start loading it up, you can look into getting yourself, a little pair of cuffs on Amazon, or maybe your gym even has them, but they're like $10. But that way you can wrap that cuff around your wrist and just focus on that push without having to actually grip anything. And I have found that that's a really great way to push shoulders without taxing your elbows and your hands through the whole time. So that kind of covers my base with lateral raises. Going into the anterior portion of the delt, or sort of the front portion of the delt, we have two options, usually an overhead press or a front raise. Depending on who you are, and I am one of these people, overhead press might not be your best option. Sometimes that is dependent upon shoulder mobility. Sometimes that is dependent upon rib cage structure. Sometimes that is dependent upon injury history. But an overhead press is a much more challenging movement than most people make it out to be. And when I say challenging, I think I mean more so. I mean more so to get in the position and do it safely. So I'm a little skeptical with overhead presses for most people. I like to either rely on maybe a machine or maybe a high incline rather than a totally vertical overhead press. So maybe instead of sitting on a 90-degree bench where you're totally seated upright, maybe you take an inclined bench and you put it at 75 degrees, so you're leaning back a little bit, and it can be a little bit easier on the shoulders.
Gotcha.
Same idea there. We want to be thinking about the out and in tracking for our shoulders, right? So we don't want to think up and down. We want to think out and in. So when you're going through either your raises, let's stay on the overhead press. When you're going through your overhead press, you want to focus on pulling that elbow and hand down and out, and then pressing that elbow and hand up and in. And in the bottom of that position, if you're watching yourself in the mirror, you might even look like a field goal, right? You might be 90-90, and then you're pressing up and in. So that's really important whenever we're training the shoulders, to be sure that we're actually taxing the shoulders and we're not just, again, using our triceps. If we keep that hand close to our body and we press straight up, that elbow bends and that elbow extends, man.
You're about to take my upper body training
Is that,
to the next level.
That's what I'm trying to do, buddy.
Seriously, I'm doing all of this wrong.
That's what I'm trying to do, man. And it's not necessarily that you're doing it wrong, man. It's just like there's maybe some more ways to do it more efficiently, because I don't think anybody would look at the physique you build or the strength you've developed and thought you did it wrong, right?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm
It's just a different perception.
Exactly.
You know?
I know when it comes to shoulder presses with dumbbells, usually, and I fixed it. Now my elbow is out here, but my hand is still in here.
Yep.
But I remember I used to train it with my elbows in here. So I used to do shoulder
Elbows
presses
tucked in.
like that.
Yep.
So literally just up and down.
Well, you can have your elbows tucked in, but that hand needs to track out.
Oh, yeah.
So I could go elbow tucked in, but that hand's got to track out, right? So the name of the game is, how do you keep the resistance far enough from your body? Yeah, or keep the resistance far from the pivot point.
Okay.
Right? If that resistance is so close to the pivot point, there's no real lever through it.
Okay.
Okay, so that covers the overhead press. If we want to talk about a front raise, there's a couple different options with a front raise. Usually, for sake of simplicity, I'm going to take somebody on an incline bench. Again, maybe 75 degrees, 60 degrees, somewhere kind of an halfway point down. And we're going to lean all the way back. We're going to keep our elbows nice and straight. We're going to grab those dumbbells, and we're going to reach out and forward, pause at the top, and then we're going to be nice and slow on the way down. Think of it like a lateral raise, but out front. I'm explaining it like this because I don't think this is maybe as common of an exercise.
Yeah.
Because I think most people default to overhead press for anterior deltoid, which is fine. But again, I have found that a front raise is a lot easier on shoulders, and I am personally someone who never had any success growing their shoulders with overhead press. For me, it was always front raises.
I got you.
Again, the scapula has to stay locked down and back, man. I mean, that's really the name of the game here. Like I cannot overstate that enough, because the second you lift that dumbbell up and that scapula shrugs or rounds, again, we have used something else. We have defeated the purpose of the exercise, which is to challenge the muscle or one specific muscle, right? So that is going to be your front raise. You could also look at doing like a cable rope raise. I would highly recommend you just YouTube some of these exercises if you haven't ever heard of them. You'll get a good idea of what you're seeing. You might have to apply some of the things we've talked about, because maybe the guides aren't perfect that are out there. But that way you can at least sort of get an idea. But a cable rope raise can be a good idea as well, for the same reason we were talking about earlier, and that those cables can give us a better resistance curve to train our shoulders. So sometimes you can I've had people, you can stand away from a cable stack, have a rope between your legs, and then you can reach that sucker out and away. Yep, exactly. And that'll get the front of the delt really nicely. So those are kind of my two that come to the front side of the delt. We will save rear delt and some of that for our posterior episode. So stay tuned for that next week. And then finally, moving into triceps here, I know the triceps are on the back side of the body, but they work in unison with our other anterior muscles through pressing exercises, right? So that's why we typically train triceps or tack on triceps with an anterior workout split. So when it comes to triceps, you want to be sure that you're training them in different positions of shoulder flexion, which is a fancy way of saying, maybe having a tricep exercise with your elbow at your side and a tricep exercise with your elbow elevated. Okay. So that, everybody's first thought that comes to mind with a tricep exercise is a rope push down, right? Standing next to the cables, that's one with the elbows back, right? That checks that box. That is the shortened position. And personally, that is usually something I like to do for a little bit lighter weight and a little bit higher reps.
Same.
Don't have to, just telling you what I prefer. From there, you also want to be sure you're doing a tricep exercise with that elbow elevated. So that could be a dumbbell skull crusher. That could be a rope overhead extension. That could be if you've ever heard of a katana extension, which is where that arm is behind your head and you're extending straight up. Yep, exactly that. So that's really the name of the game with triceps, is being sure that you are locked in with those shoulder blades. Your elbow stays in one space as you bend and extend it. So wherever your elbow starts, your elbow needs to stay the whole time.
Okay, and the reason why we're choosing these exercises is because of efficiency, right?
Yeah,
because
simplicity's sake and efficiency. Yeah.
Okay, because like if you were to do like a close grip bench press or dips with your elbows in, that wouldn't be like as efficient for growing your triceps specifically, right?
That was a great question, man. It would be super efficient.
It would.
The reason, I shouldn't say what the problem is. The reason I didn't go into that specifically is because when we're talking about doing big compound movements with something like your triceps, it's very hard, depending on who you are, to stay just in your triceps.
Yeah.
So that being said, usually if you do want to do some sort of tricep press, in my opinion, you save it for the end.
Okay.
So you save it for the end and you be very specific with that range of motion. You watch, right? Where am I bending at the elbow? Am I bending at the elbow? That elbow has to bend and extend to be trained. Mm-hmm. So again, personally, the close grip presses were something that I never had any success with. But if you are going to do them, in my opinion, they go best at the end. They go best at the end when the tricep is already fatigued. You can connect to it the easiest and you can focus on using that.
Got you.
Does that make sense?
It does,
yep.
Yeah.
But the same idea applies in that you want that elbow to be bending and extending. Now, if we're doing a close grip press, we are also moving at the shoulder, right? So our rule of the elbow staying in one spot no longer applies. However, if we're going to do a close grip press, we need to be sure that the majority of our movement is happening at the elbow still. Mm-hmm. So even though that shoulder can move a little bit, again, we're on audio, but even though that shoulder can move a little bit, imagine I tuck that elbow into my side, but as I lower down, I pull that hand towards my shoulder. So the majority of movement is my elbow bending. So at the start of that movement, my elbow was 190. Now my elbow is fully bent.
Yeah.
And then boom, I can extend straight up. So in my opinion, most people actually can't do this exercise on a straight barbell safely or efficiently for a long period of time without tearing up elbows, wrists, or other joints. So if I were the average listener, I would take some dumbbells and set up like I would a dumbbell skull crusher. And then what I would do is I would lower that elbow down to my side and I would tap my dumbbell to my shoulder. So you're trying to get that elbow down to your side, tap the dumbbell to your shoulder, keep it tucked in, and press it straight up. That way we are bending and extending the elbow, shoulder still moving, but because we have biased the movement so much in the elbow, that tricep should be what's taking over and failing first.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, in powerlifting, we call that movement a JM press.
Yep.
And we usually do that with a dumbbell.
Yep. And
barbell.
In my opinion, not that there's anything wrong with a classic close grip bench press, especially for someone who's powerlifting, but in my opinion, if we're sitting here talking about being efficient for the triceps and building triceps in a close grip press, it's going to be the JM press all day.
Yeah. It's
going to be, how do I go through a pressing movement where my hand is as far away from my elbow as possible, and then my elbow is straight.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of my thought process there. So what I want to do now is I kind of want to bullet point these all the way through, and I want to kind of start throwing in some ideas of how I would actually format them. So we are doing okay on time. So let me see if I can knock this out. So going with let's just start in the classic order of chest, shoulders, and then triceps. So let's say I walk into the gym. First thing, I think I'm going to try an incline dumbbell bench press. That seems to be what works the best for most people. You can focus on, again, tracking that elbow in and out. You can really shove those shoulder blades down and back on the bench and feel them wedged in there. And you can then focus on that elbow up and in. So again, incline dumbbell bench press I find works best for most people.
And that's a slight incline, correct?
Low incline, correct. Yep. And maybe we're going to do, depending on who you are, 2 to 3 sets of maybe 10 to 15 reps, right? Something a little bit heavier and a decent enough amount of volume. After that, if we're going to talk about maybe push-ups or dips, usually when we're using body weight exercises, and this is just me, I am a fan of higher intensity and lower volume depending upon who the person is. So usually I'm just going to take a set or two to failure with those movements, to form failure, right? So, if I can do 15 push-ups that day, I'm doing 15. If I can do 20 that day, I'm doing 20. Sometimes if those movements maybe feel too easy, you should learn how to challenge them more. So maybe pause in the bottom, slow it down on the way down, Sometimes it's funny, man. Sometimes people will be like, that felt too easy. And my response is, you made it too easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyways, I digress there. And then finally there, if we want to complete the pecs, let's talk about a pec deck. right? And just because we're at the end of that movement, end of that chest section of the workout, and hopefully your pecs are already fried. Let's just go ahead and go into a fly. And with that fly, that pec deck, whatever we want to do, let's go a little bit lighter so we can just focus on finishing off that contraction. So usually I'm going to do a couple of sets of maybe 15 to 20 reps, right? Try to just shove some blood in there and really get a good contraction. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with going heavier or lighter on any of these movements. You know, if you want to find a way to load your dips or your push-up, I guess just a weighted belt for dips, but probably don't put plates on your back for push-ups like some people do.
Yeah.
No offense if you do. There's just better options, man. But anyways, that's kind of everything that comes to mind for pecs. Any input or thoughts or questions there?
Honestly, I don't think I should put in any input.
He's old triceps over here.
Yeah,
he's like, wait till we get to triceps.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I guess the exercises that I do are the exact same, but it's the way that I execute those exercises that I'm learning right now has been completely wrong.
Yeah, and that's and again, we are over audio, and I really encourage everyone to check us out on Instagram, where we try to give you more of that. We try to show you a little bit more of the how. But again, it's selection and it's how. It's both those things put together. So, cool. Moving on to our delts. Usually I like going a lateral raise first just because most people prefer to emphasize, those wide shoulders, that outward sweep, man. Yeah, absolutely. So since most people usually prefer that, usually I'm going to start with the lateral raise while we're the most fresh, and we want to go with the cables. And usually with shoulders, man, I don't usually like to work under 10 reps. I've just found that personally it feels better to be in the 10 to 20 reps with almost everything. Maybe a little bit lighter if you're at the end. So in my opinion, let's say 2 to 3 sets of a cable lateral raise for 10 to 20 reps. And then let's say 2 to 3 sets of either an anterior raise or a dumbbell overhead press for however many sets or reps. The biggest thing here is this volume and rep recommendation is going to vary on what your priority is. So out of all these 3 muscle groups, if shoulders are your priority, maybe you should do an extra set and maybe you should do them before chest. Yeah. So when I'm sitting here throwing out samples or maybe this much, maybe that much, I mean, it's kind of me just pulling it out of my ass, man. Some people can get all they need out of 1 set. Some people it takes 10 sets. So it's going to be kind of case specific. So this is really just my shot in the dark for a average Joe who wants to build some muscle. Yeah. So triceps conceptually makes the most sense to go shortened and then lengthened, or elbows back and then elbows lifted. Okay. However, just because it's my current obsession, big triceps, I have personally been spending the majority of my tricep training with the elbows elevated and off the body.
So that's something like skull crushers.
Skull crushers, overhead extensions with a cable. Katana, exactly, nailed it. Yep, just that same sound effect. Yep. Yeah. But so I have found that spending the majority of the time there helps us buy what's called the long head and helps us kind of build that beefiness to the tricep. Yeah. I'm getting into some of my nerdy bodybuilding stuff now. But I personally have enjoyed spending the most amount of time there. So I'm going to be biased and say, let's spend 2 to 3 sets for 10 to 20 reps, right? Something heavy, let's build some tissue, let's work here, let's keep those elbows planted, keep your upper arm where it is, bend and extend. And then at the end, I like doing that short head for, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but a little bit higher rep, whatever, 10, 20, 15. Yeah. Again, they're all numbers. And it's always a variance, man. People like numbers. I write numbers down for sake of consistency, but at the end of the day, your body knows contraction. It doesn't know numbers.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yep.
And I really like the higher reps for the short head.
Yeah, I do too. I have found that higher reps for shortened positions just helps you connect and shove blood. Yeah. And it feels good. So cool, man. That's kind of everything I have in those 3 muscle groups. You can, if we're going to sit here and talk about bodybuilding stuff, sometimes it can be a good idea to do just a general burnout or fatigue at the end, or a press that's going to help everything fatigue. So maybe you just go back and do knee push-ups till you can't. Maybe you find a machine chest press and you pump it out till you can't. Yep. Because when we went through all these lists, some of the movements were isolation, but a lot of them were compound movements, and we're just talking about trying to bias a specific muscle. So through some of these things, like the dumbbell chest press, your triceps working to some extent. Yeah. The dumbbell overhead press, your upper pec fibers are working to some extent.
And probably your triceps.
So, exactly. Yeah. Especially if it's you.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding. But
hopefully not from now on.
not anymore. You're gonna show up with boulder shoulders next week, man.
Little ass triceps.
Your triceps. Could you imagine your triceps were gone, but your shoulders were huge?
They just shrunk.
Oh man. So yeah, usually I like to finish with some sort of burnout that feels good for all those movements. So maybe that's a chest press to failure. Maybe that's a knee push-up to failure, something of the sort. I think that's sort of all my thoughts on all of that. As with always, if your goal is to be building tissue, you need to have an adequate amount of animal-based protein. You need to have an adequate amount of calories. You need to be training intensely. And I have become less married to specific progressive overload, but you got to bring the heat every workout, man.
Yeah.
To say the least.
If you do that, you will be progressively overloaded.
I was going to say, I mean, that really seems to be the name of the game, man. Everybody's so afraid of overtraining, but they're just under recovering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I've again, a little bit of a tangent here, but on my own training, I've been winging it a little bit more recently and just trying to have some fun and just trying to hit it hard. And it's changed it for me a little bit.
Same, man.
So it's been cool. But all of that being said, we are always open to any questions via Instagram at Progress Through Change or at Toro Strong. And we're going to start answering some Instagram questions right now.
Let's do it.
All right. From Kirk Blue, what's your holiday cheat meal? You first or me first?
Which holiday?
That's a good question, actually.
Let's do Thanksgiving since it just passed.
Well, you know what? We'll do Thanksgiving. For me, on Thanksgiving, man, I always forget how much I like stuffing every year. And I like cheesy potatoes.
Oh, dude, the cheesy potato.
And this year, I may or may not have had 6 slices of pumpkin pie in 48 hours. No, I can't. What's your cheat meal? Your Thanksgiving one. And I ate some other bullshit too, to be honest, but those are just the first things that came to mind.
Well, when you were saying that, I just realized I didn't even have one bite of stuffing.
Wait till
Rookie mistake, man. Usually, my favorite is the yams.
Yams?
This year, I had no yams either.
Damn.
What was wrong with me, man? I had a whole bunch of meat and then the deviled eggs, and I made a pie.
Really?
Yeah, it was a pumpkin pecan pie.
How was
pumpkin
it?
pie
You
with
made it?
pecan. Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
From scratch.
I had so many people tell me to make pies this year, but I
Do
just
it.
bought one.
It's so easy, bro.
That's what everybody tells me, but I just bought one still.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, especially the Costco ones.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But no, yeah, I guess that's kind of fun if you can make it. Yeah,
it's really good. It's really good.
Dang, man. Yeah, so there's our holiday cheat meal. I don't think it really varies for me otherwise. Oh, you know what? Last like 2 years around like Christmas time, Christmas. I had a lot of fun having Bailey's in my coffee in the mornings.
What is that?
So I don't know if that counts. It's like a coffee creamer that has a little bit of alcohol in it.
Oh, for
yeah. Is
it like Irish cream?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Basically the same deal. Yeah. So that was like last 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had some real cool clients of mine actually put me on that, and I was like, oh shit, this is a bad habit.
Yeah.
So sometimes around the holidays, I'll enjoy that a little bit. Like I think last Christmas I had like 2 or 3 coffees with that before I had anything to eat. So yeah. So anyways, that's my usual holiday cheat meal.
I'll have to try that. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure.
Eggnog too.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever actually had eggnog.
It's really good.
I don't know, man. I've heard
I'm not going to drink it anymore though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't fit the macros.
I stopped dairy and beef.
Straight up.
Yeah, man.
Really? Why?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess my stomach issues.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was normal to have or to be farting, be bloated.
Yeah.
Or just have like stomach cramps.
Yeah.
And I took out beef and dairy, and it's all gone away.
Big change. Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
I am a huge. I love beef steak, all that. I did ground beef for like all of my 2021 prep. But I actually took ground beef out as well, and it has made a world of difference in my skin.
I believe
So
it,
yeah, digestion didn't change much for me, but for me it was really a difference in my skin. So that's why I have not gone the beef route. And the milk thing doesn't surprise me, man. I mean, at this point, I would say like I found it's almost rare for me to find someone that does okay with all dairy.
That's a good point,
like most people, like myself, like I can get away with like Greek yogurt or cheese or something like that.
Yeah.
But most people, man, like straight up milk is a no-go. So yeah, man.
It'll just tear right through you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear you're prioritizing the digestion.
Yeah.
So cool. All right, man. Well, let's wrap it up there. We will catch y'all next week. We appreciate you listening. And as always, this episode is brought to you by progressthroughchange.com, where you can get your 4 Easy Habits for Fat Loss guide. Check out the link in the description. Chris will kind of make us a nice little bullet list of everything we talked about today. So that way you can have a nice PDF to review and check out. So as always, you can check us out on Instagram at Progress Through Change and at Toro Strong.
Yes.
We will see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Peace.